Hey, Doug.
Hey there.
Good morning. Good afternoon. Is it morning yet?
No.
Hello.
Holy smokes. Hello, Mr. Murphy.
How you doing, Doug?
Good, sir. How are you?
Great.
Good. I'm sorry I missed you the last couple of times we had some folks out there.
That's all right. I carried around today. They put me through the mill today.
You did. All
They
right.
had to get a lot of that.
Let's give everybody a chance to kind of get their audios and videos and stuff up and going. Hello, Spencer. Hi, Indra.
Hi.
How is everybody?
Good.
Good.
Okay, Virgil, that's you on the iPhone, right? I'm gonna change your name. So yeah, I'm gonna change your name on there if you don't mind. I know you're not called iPhone.
Yeah, but good.
We can call you iPhone if you want to, but we'll call you Virgil. All right. Hey, Billy.
Hey, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. Okay, we have, I don't know how many more people we expect here. Let's see. Alicia, did you see how many people had accepted? We waiting on some other folks?
We're done.
It's 4:15.
I
think
15.
And we have 12 on the screen
16.
here. Okay, let's give everybody another second or two then. And I'm gonna see if I can. We were actually having another meeting before this, and I'm gonna see if I can pause that recording. I don't know how to do that.
I
can see you.
Hello, Mr. Joe Cannon.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you, sir?
Good, thank you. Not getting around
A couple more. We're giving everybody just another second or two before we get rolling here. Okay. Alicia, do we have any others, you think?
I just
Let's
let
move.
Landon in. So we're at 17.
Okay. And Landon looks like he's not connected audio or video.
Nothing yet. Oh.
And Brooks, I guess you're here on behalf of the Drennans, right? So they're not going to be on.
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
We're here.
Okay.
I think Seth and
I don't know who 813 is.
Miller were supposed to call in. So
813 is
813 is
Yeah.
probably Miller.
It's Miller Dowdy.
Miller, let me see if I can find your number there and change your name. Hold on.
Okay. All right. Thank
We're
you.
good.
Yeah, I had trouble on the Zoom with our bank security protocol, so it didn't like the Zoom connection.
I'm sorry. I didn't think about that. We could have done Teams or something else. I think you.
Yeah, it likes Teams and those kind of things. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so the way this is set up right now, and I don't want to mess up the Zoom, but if you don't have a video on, you're not showing up on the screen, but that doesn't mean you're not here. People can still hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
That's
All
okay, as long as I can listen in and
Yes.
that's fine. Great. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Okay. So can we ready to go ahead and get started? Indra, do you want to call this meeting to order?
Okay.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just playing with you. I'm just messing with you. Okay. But you can, if you want to, you call it to order. We'll get started. All right. So this meeting is hereby called to order. So we have and I was really excited the other day when I heard from Rhett. He told me, hey, Doug, I think we're going to be getting a letter of intent. And I said, okay, let's hold on. Let's make sure we do before I send out anything to the families, because we didn't want to do something and have to take it away. But we now have this letter of intent, and that's what we kind of want to go over it with everybody. Do I need to share my screen with everybody to see the letter of intent, or we just want to kind of talk through it?
Just explain it to us.
Okay, I'll do my best. I have people on here that are a whole lot smarter than me, Andrew, that are going to do a much better job explaining than I'm going to. So, all right. So let's get started here. I know there's a question I've heard before about who is Land Ventures. Now that's the buyer. And so Clark and Bagesha and Rhett yesterday had an opportunity to speak to the buyers. And what we were trying to do is find out a little bit more about them. So I'm going to be quiet and I'm going to ask Rhett, because he's probably closer to them than any of us, but then Rhett and Bagesha and Clark to talk about that. And Rhett, give them an idea of some of your background with that gentleman that you used to work kind of side by side with them.
Yeah, I'll be glad to. Thanks, Doug. Good afternoon, everyone. So I worked with the president of Land Ventures in my previous role at a company called Four Star, which is a national corporation. I was over the Alabama operations and he was over the South Carolina operations. So that's how I got to know him. And then he has since ventured out on his own and he started Land Ventures. And so the purpose of yesterday's call was to get a little bit more background information so that we could relay to y'all what their footprint is and what they're currently doing. And the information that he gave us is that they are currently have under control 300,000 acres of land across the southeast United States, and they do not just residential development. They also do some industrial and some mixed use. So included in that, they have 42,000 lots, which would be like production subdivision lots, D.R. Horton, Lennar, things like that. And they operate in 8 states and 23 markets right now. They joint venture with some firms you may have heard of. One of them is called Walton Capital. They're a big land firm that is a venture capital firm. And then also D.R. Horton, which is just the nation's #1 builder. So they have a projected closings of $1.5 billion in their pipeline right now. And we asked him what his intended use would be for the property. And he said, it's still up in the air until, he gets it under contract and starts his due diligence, but he thinks that there will probably be a greater likelihood of some type of industrial use, although he didn't want to rule out residential, multifamily, or mixed use at this point. So those were the highlights that I deemed from it, and I'd ask Bagesha and Clark to please chime in on anything else they may have gotten from the conversation, and I'll mute myself.
Clark, you want to go ahead? Okay, Bagesha, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'll go. Hey, everyone. Good to see everyone again. Yeah, so we talked to Brett, who was the owner of Land Ventures, and like Brett said, they're operating in 8 states. They have a heavy, JV with Walton Capital, which is probably the biggest capital firm I've looked into. And they are in town, and depending on how this meeting goes, what everyone feels about it, they would like to come visit the site. So it's it's a serious offer, what I got from them. And so I got a pretty positive outlook from our Zoom yesterday. Clark, I'll let you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Rhett obviously has the closest background with him. But so as he mentioned, he's based out of Charleston, South Carolina. I myself am originally from the Carolinas. So I just wanted to do a little personal research. So reached out to not only our NAI network, but as well as personal connections who have actually worked with him in the past or know him personally, just to make kind of a personal connection. And all of the feedback was a positive feedback for their outfit. And as Bagesha mentioned, he is currently working on a project in East Tennessee, so he's driving distance away. But that was kind of our initial meeting with him to make those connections directly.
And Clark or Bagesha, you had mentioned, and I think it'd be interesting for the sellers to know this, you had mentioned that depending on this meeting, they were prepared to get in a plane and come over here next week and see the property feet on the ground. Is that right?
Yes, so Brett, the owner, is going to be in Birmingham. He's got a 10 a.m. on Monday. He is more than happy to get a rental car and drive up, and then go see the site Tuesday morning. He wants to, but if we decide today, no, we're not interested, then there's no point in him driving up, but he's ready and prepared.
Very good. Any questions from the sellers about the group? They sound pretty solid to me from what I hear, but anybody have any questions or they want to ask? No? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the letter of intent itself. One of the first questions that popped in my head was that they've offered a $30,000 per acre. And we looked at, Bagesha, can you kind of share your screen? What I was curious to see was how we looked at this from the beginning, not what we were asking. You know, we were asking 35,000 as the floor and going up. And you can share your screen, Bagesha. This was a. You got it up? Okay. If y'all look on the bottom two, there was a 25,656 up to 36,652 range, and that was dependent primarily on the size of the tract. So we're going to fall somewhere in there, and we just pulled this up a minute ago when we were getting ready for this meeting. So his 30,000 an acre is somewhat in that range of what we always kind of talked about. But I do think, and I think everybody on my team thinks that there's some room in there. Of course, this is their first offer, so I'm sure there's going to be some room. But Rhett, you and Clark and Bagesha, I think, mentioned something to them or talked a little bit to Brett about that yesterday. What was his reaction about pricing and so on?
So in the conversation, we specifically asked him about the offer and basically the carving out of the upland acres from the wetland acres, or what we think are the wetland acres. And he was firm. He said, just like, I guess, with, farming the land, the usable acreage is the stuff that produces the yield. Well, in the same way of development, the usable acreage is what they can actually use to develop and make a profit on. So we asked him, well, what would be some potential solutions to dealing with the wetland acres? He said, I'd be open to carving out the wetlands and letting the property owners keep it if that was something they were interested in. And then the other thing was, he said, we could make an offer on the wetland acres, but it would be pretty low. He used a timberland acreage price as a reference point of what they're paying for timberland right now. And his reasoning was, I just can't use it because it's not developable. So those were the takeaways that I took from it, and I'll yield to Clark.
Can I ask can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Let's say they carve out the upland, and of course you've got all this water runoff, where does that go? To the wetlands.
Yes, eventually what the municipality, Limestone County or Huntsville, whatever direction they go, they would have to do some type of stormwater retention or detention on site. But you're correct. The final, once it's detained on site, it trickles down into the wetlands or the body of water that is closest to it.
Okay, how is that right that they kind of get to somewhat use it as their water runoff and then leave it on us, or not purchase it? That's going to create a whole lot more water runoff and create more of a wetland situation, because you're now got basically concrete or whatever hard surface that's not absorbing all that water on 700-800 acres that's all of a sudden being poured in, whereas it would have absorbed that. So now you're creating a more of a worse situation if we were to be left with just that land. Certainly
that's a good point. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point.
So either, I'm more of they need to kind of look at taking it all at this point if they're going to, come in and cherry pick, I think is the term I used before. I'm not big on that. I mean, if we're going to carve it out into parcels, that's one thing. But if they're just going to come in and take all the big stuff at 30,000 an acre and leave us just the wetlands, we're kind of stuck. And in a situation where it could just get worse.
You bring up, I think, a very good point, and Rhett, that and Clark and Bagesha, that's a point that we need to bring up to make solid our argument that they need to take the entire thing. Because kind of when I hear Spencer say that, I liken it to a shopping center, that they build the shopping center, pave the parking lot, and the next door neighbor has to burden the retention pond. So that's kind of what's happening here, but on a much larger scale. So even though he can't build on it, Rhett, there is benefit to them because that's going to take care of their runoff, their stormwater.
And if they have to build a retention pond on site, you're not talking about one, you're talking multiple retention ponds for that large an area. Now
they have to build the retention pond on the usable acreage. You're correct. You can't go disturb the wetlands with a retention pond. So yes, they would have to do it. Now, hang
on. Hold on. Here's where I was going with that. Another selling point to them taking the wetlands also is that they could put the retention pond into the wetlands, because not all of it's necessarily wetlands. It's just wooded up to a point. It maybe as it gets closer to the river, it becomes more of a wetland situation, but otherwise it's just timber tract. So they could they would have benefit from full use of the upland and full use of development, and set their retention ponds to the wetland area, or what they want to call the wooded area. So they do benefit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we have a professional with OMI who's going to be doing an updated analysis. And so we'll have better clarity on exactly what's uplands and what's wetlands. Because I think there's some question there.
Right. And there's also, I believe I brought up the discussion of the new laws that have changed that allow you to reclaim what they consider wetlands and move and basically not, I don't know if I necessarily call it all wetlands necessarily. Like I said, I think a lot of it is just got timber on it, and it could be cleared and become upland. So that is also another big benefit. You're looking at probably another couple 100 acres as you edge out around the definite cleared area. So, I mean, they aren't necessarily having to pay for just timber. They're looking at potential upland with some clearing. And like I said, also the potential of putting the catch basins and such there and runoffs, because that takes quite a bit to run that stuff off, especially when coming off of that many acreage.
That's right. I think the OMI report will really help us delineate exactly what's usable and what's not.
Okay.
And we started that in motion yesterday, Spencer. So we contacted Morel, and there's a lady that's working with me on another project that is with OMI, and that's what they specialize in. So they were actually out there with Mike this morning, feet on the ground. Mike, I don't know how long they stayed with you or what. I know Bagesha was out there with them for a period of time, but that's what we're doing, Spencer, is let's get our hands around what really do we have now in terms of an updated wetland delineation report. We have one, but it's dated, and we need to kind of get it updated so we know accurately what we're talking about on uplands and wetlands.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's in play. And I think she texted or emailed. I have not seen it. Bagesha read it. I don't know what all. I think she's basically saying we just need to get the get the wetlands delineation updated. She's going to give us a proposal on what that looks like in terms of cost. And it'll probably, it's much less than what you guys did the first round, but they're just going to update it for the current administration and for the current reading on that Supreme Court case.
Yes, Doug, if I may, met with Sharon this morning and with Mr. Mike here. She did say, it's not going to be a completely new, let's scope out the wetland project. It's just going to be an update based on the new laws from last fall. So, like Doug said, it's not going to be some crazy, ridiculous number, but I think in the long run, I don't want to throw out a number. I can't remember. Maybe it's like around $5,000 will help us kind of really define what is wetland, what is upland, and really give us a good exact number on how many acres is truly wetland jurisdiction versus non-jurisdiction.
Can I say something? This is Brooks.
Hey, Brooks.
I think also, Doug, you need to really look close at the original wetland study because, you know, when Bethany was doing all this, you know, her primary goal there was to look at that 700 or so acres of really good industrial land right there. And so you may want to make sure that that original wetland study is actually covering the entire property. Because if I remember correctly, everything that 160 acres to the east of Mooresville Road was not even included in that original study. Okay. And so that could be a potential whole new study over there in order to know how much of that 160 is actually usable. Personally, with all that broken up with the different streams and stuff, I think that's going to be tough for anyone to pay industrial prices on the quote upland area because you're just going to have slivers of upland areas. And then also, I don't think there was much wetland studies done west of the main creek there on the southwestern portion. So what I'm getting at is what we don't want to happen is that we all look at this, we agree to pay $5,000 and we get an update to the limited amount of what they did originally because all that study, if I'm incorrect, and I may be wrong, and I may have been looking at this incorrectly, but I don't think that's really going to help us a lot. I think it's going to, if we really want that, it may be more in depth than you're thinking, but talk to Morrell, see exactly what they have and make sure I'm not incorrect on that. But you may want to make sure we're comparing apples and oranges there. I don't want us to be blindsided by that.
Great points, and we're right on there. Rhett kind of addressed that. He's already had conversations, Brooks, with Morrell and with Sharon on that very topic.
Yeah, Brooks, you're spot on. They did not really look at where the tree line is to the west back towards 65. They really didn't delineate that, and they didn't delineate the 160 acres on the east side of Mooresville Road. So unfortunately, I wasn't there today. I couldn't make it up when Begeisha met with Sharon on site, but that would be something that we may potentially want to look at.
Sharon looked at the 160 on the east side today. I carried today.
Yeah.
And she took some samples and looked at the 160.
Good.
Yeah, well, I think if we decide we want to move, I think that might be important. It's definitely very important when it comes to this offer, because obviously, if they're only interested in paying us $30,000 for the quote upland areas, we got to know exactly what the upland areas are, because that makes a big difference. Because just running numbers out there on what I'm assuming they're saying the farmland and all that, if they don't include a lot of that 160, you're really looking at about 830 acres of good upland ground. And if you start taking that 830 times the 30,000, that's about 25 million. And then if you divide that out by what's in the north and the south, you're actually looking at more like, assuming my analysis did not include adding a little bit of money for timber on top of that, but you're getting down into the low 20,000s per acre. And even on the south, assuming they don't count any of that and they just give you a few thousand an acre, you're only looking at maybe 18,000 an acre on the south down there when you extrapolate out that. And so all those numbers are going to be very important, I think, on an offer like this, where they're saying they're only going to offer it on a certain part of the land. I would almost rather them come back and say, no, you offer, go ahead and give us a dollar amount for all 1,280 acres, so we don't have to extrapolate all this stuff, which they may not be able to do without those studies. I don't know. That's just my thoughts real quick.
Those are some great points. Well, here's what I was going to suggest, and these are just suggestions, that if your numbers were accurate, let's say we have 830, let's just pretend like that study comes back and supports that. We have 830 acres of upland and we have 450 acres of wetland. I mentioned to some of you earlier, we know of a farm, the Hamby farm, just north of you, 480 acres, Brooks, is being offered right now at 45,000 an acre. Now that's totally different than what they're getting. I don't know they've had any offers on it. They're asking that much for the wetlands piece of theirs, which is about half of their property. They're asking 6,000 an acre. Now, if we go back to Rhett's comment a little earlier, Rhett, what, give me an idea. I have no idea what timberland or what hunting land might go for. You said that he mentioned something about that.
The timberland that he mentioned was around 1,800 an acre.
Okay. So at 1,800 an acre, if you applied that toward the 450 acres and you applied, say, 32,000, I'm just pulling these numbers somewhere on our range, 32,500 an acre for the 830, we're roughly at $28 million for the whole package. And that's kind of a blended number. So then if you take that number, and again, I'm talking the back of a napkin, so y'all don't hold me to any of this, but this is just concept. Take that divided by the full thing. We're selling it to him on a blended rate of $21,601 an acre. If you got 32.5 for the uplands and 1,500, 1,800 for the wetlands, that's just internal talking. I'm not suggesting that, but the concept is what I'm kind of suggesting. So let's raise the price of the uplands and let's include those wetlands because they're going to be of some value to him, some value somewhere in there. And let's come up with a number that could end up being that was 27,650,000. You know, we could make it. I'm just throwing numbers out here, but say $30 million. If you had 30 million, then now we're selling it at, gosh, if we even used our lowest figure, let me look see what that would be that we used on our when we all talked. 1,280 acres times what was it, Begeisha? 26,000 and some change per acre.
26,656.
That's $34,120,000 basically. And so we could go and say, look, you don't have to pay us 30,000 an acre. We'll sell it to you for 26,265, 250, whatever that is. But you take the whole thing, and that's a blended price for the whole package. At least that concept. We did that on a small parcel of land on County Line Road where I had 25 acres. 10 of it was wetlands. The other was uplands, and we sold it for almost 3 to 1. So at least that concept played out there, and I think that Rhett Clark, Begeisha, you guys talked to him. I didn't talk to him, but do you think that logic would resonate with him if we don't even have to talk numbers? We just kind of talk that concept. We're going to sell you the whole 1,280. I like what Spencer said, that he's bound to get some benefit off of that wetlands from his development. And as we said earlier, even if he can't use it for runoff, if he's got a residential development over there, that's a beautiful nature feature that you could talk about. You know, you get a land trust or nature trail over there, or hiking trails or whatever, biking trails. So there's some benefit that he could reap off of that if he were to put some residential stuff on there.
Also, we've never really looked at what is it on the south side, 65? Interstate 65 or highway or something?
South side, yeah, 565.
565, okay. How much of that, is it wetland right to the interstate, or is there actually, you know, some decent land just timbered right there close to the interstate that could be cleared and they could sell off as commercial right there on the interstate side?
And Spencer, we're a little bit off. There's a couple of other property owners between us and that interstate.
Oh, okay. I missed that then. Okay.
Yeah, and just for reference too, I would not that this matters, but if you talk to him again, I mean that, you know, I don't know where he's getting that $1,800 an acre for timberland, and I'm not saying that maybe in some very rural, you know, backwoods parts of Alabama you can get timberland for that, but even at a low timberland value for that land there, I mean, just the timber is worth more than $1,800 an acre. And that's just the trees out there, much less the land. And then from a recreational standpoint, and, you know, there's a lot of wealthy people in Huntsville who would love a 300-acre nature preserve, hunting preserve out there for themselves that would probably pay, you know, I'm making, I don't know for sure, but I would think at least $5,000 to $6,000 an acre. I'm thinking out of my top of my head. Y'all may, somebody else that's from there may say I'm wrong, but I'm just thinking out loud there. That's a pretty unique area there, so close to town, and everything else. So I'm just thinking that out loud. I know that doesn't make a huge difference, but I definitely think if they did some analysis, they could come up with a lot more than 1,800. Not to mention the ability to use the creeks and all that stuff for runoff and everything else. Just giving you information.
Brooks, that coincidentally is spot on with that Hamby farm. I think I mentioned maybe already, they're asking $6,000 an acre for their wetlands part. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I don't have any base. I have no idea what the timberland might be valued at, but so if we use $6,000 an acre, just in running some numbers, that's 2.7 million. Plus, if I have now 830 acres at, I'm going to say 28,000 an acre. I don't know. That's 20. That's 25 million. Anyway, the concept is there. We need to run those numbers and see what makes sense for the whole group, and that way everybody would basically, we'd have a nice sale that would encompass all of that. Everybody would be able to walk away. The 1,280 acres would become Brett's, and I think that would be a very successful conversation to have with him. So some of the other owners there have not brought up anything. Are there any comments or thoughts or questions from anybody else? Nope. Okay. So let's assume that we're going to counter back, Rhett, Clark, Begeisha. We're going to counter back with we'll talk about this. We'll make a proposal and send it to everybody, but we're going to go up from the 30,000. It's a question of how much. And then we have to figure out what are we going to ask for at a blended rate to include that 400 and something to be determined, 450 acres of wetland. Now, we need a unit price, though, on the uplands, because when we have this delineation update, if we find out we don't have 450, but we have, say, 300 acres, that extra 150 acres, we're going to price up at the uplands price, and that'll, of course, push that price up. So at least in concept, that's where we are in price. I think we should go up a little bit. I think we should certainly charge for the wetlands portion and then blend that together and see what a blended rate, which on the surface is going to look lower because of the impact that it's having on the wetlands, a different value on that per acre. We don't know what that number is going to be yet, but we'll put together some numbers. Begeisha and Clark and Rhett and Rick, we'll put together some numbers and then present that to the group on here's what we recommend as going back as a counter with regard to pricing, if that's okay with everybody. And we'll give you an idea of how we came up with that. Is that fair enough?
I definitely think you need to go up.
I was just doing some math here. My thing is, if you use that 830 number as that premium, the premium of the premium, that's worth more than 30.
Okay.
And so let's say I'd say that's worth 40. And y'all may say I'm crazy, but if you use 40,000 on the 830 and you use 6,000 on the 450, you add all that together, you come up with about 35,700,000 divided by the total acres is about 27,890 would be the blended price there. And again, I know that may be not workable, but that's just my personal opinion. Just without doing a ton of analysis.
I think you're spot on. I think that what we're all talking about is something very, very similar. And I like your math. I like the idea. And I think we could tell that. I think we would sell that story. So the story really would be, okay, look, we're going to sell you all 1,280 acres, and we're going to reduce it by $2,500 an acre from your offer. Basically, we're selling it to you for $28,000 an acre. But you have to buy all 1,280 acres at that price. And here's why it makes sense to you to buy the forestry property. And that is that we're going to create a nature trail, or you can create that. You're going to have some area where you can do the, runoff, your stormwater runoff.
And they can also benefit more so than we could, as you said, for if they wanted to donate it or something and use it as a tax write-off. That is, that would be a bigger benefit to them than any of us.
Absolutely. And what Spencer's talking about, Begeisha, is what you were specializing in when we first started this conversation a few months back, is the conservation easement. And you're absolutely right. Clark, you did a little bit of study on that too. Could you kind of clock in and what you learned about the land trust and some of the other things?
Yeah, absolutely. So aside from, so if they were to carve it out, so say worst case scenario, and I know that Spencer, that probably wouldn't work for most. Aside from conservation easement, there's kind of three options. So conservation easement, creating the stewardship, creating an endowment for it. The next one is a life estate. So the Alabama Land Trust would be interested in it. The property to the west, which runs along 65 Johnny Garrett's, is in a life estate with the North Alabama Land Trust already. So that allows them to continue using at a reduced appraised value. That's what their tax benefit is. The lowest, their next option would be just a pure donation, donating to the land trust. They would take over the land, you would deed it to them in a quitclaim deed. They would have it appraised, and you would be able to use the appraised value.
Doesn't benefit, that doesn't benefit any of us because we don't have any assets to make that worthwhile. I'm not for that at all.
Right. That's what I'm saying is, so that option could be proposed to them.
Yeah, they would benefit from it. They've got the big backings and the money, and they got the write-offs for that. We don't.
So that could equate to a much higher value per acre to them 3 years down the road than it does to anybody here on this call, for sure.
Especially if they do things to increase the value of the property if they were the owners, they would certainly gain more.
Yeah. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about pricing, and I really like what I hear from you, Brooks, and everybody here with regard to the price. I think we all agree that 30,000 is not going to be the number, but we'll come up with a number. I kind of like what you said about 40,000. I just have to build a story behind that. 40,000 an acre, maybe for the good stuff, 6,000 an acre for the wetlands. Let's blend it together at 28,000 an acre and get a response. Now, so that's pricing. We've got to quantify how many acres we're truly talking about, wetlands versus upland, and that's in the works. We just talked a little bit about the benefit, Rhett and Clark and Legacia, that we can sell to them on the conservation or some type of a conservation easement that they might be entitled to take advantage of 3 years down the road. That would be a lot more impactful to them. One of the things they said in the letter of intent was they wanted us to take the property off of the market, not negotiate with anybody else during this 6-month period. They wanted their free look. What I'm going to recommend is that we would negotiate. We would basically say, we will not negotiate with anybody else, but we will continue to market the property. We will continue to expose it. And if we have inquiries that come in, we would basically just caveat that and say, in full disclosure, we need to let you know the property is under contract. It has X number of months remaining in due diligence. We'd like to continue conversations with you. We're not at liberty to negotiate any terms or conditions, and just keep those people at least at play. So if these guys were to unplug, we can hit the ground running with those prospects rather than take it completely off the market. That's my suggestion.
That brings us to earnest money. Very low.
Okay. So
and I didn't like like I said, the feature where they back out so easily, and they can pull out and basically take their earnest money right back. What's the point?
Yeah. So on the earnest money, it is low, in my opinion, and we probably all. Oh, Billy's back in. He must have jumped out. Alicia, can you let him in? The earnest money at 50,000. Rhett, on some of the major deals that you were involved in with D.R. Horton, what kind of earnest money did you see for something of this magnitude? Can you give us a feel for some of that?
Well, the earnest money is always important because it does show good faith and intent. But at the end of the day, it's not. This is very common to get a lengthy free look, giving the magnitude of the property, and also given that they're going to be spending probably a couple $100,000 in just different due diligence items, engineering, getting entitlements done. So it's not like they're not spending money. I just want to make that clear. They are spending money. But, I would say $100,000 you could counter with an earnest money. But at the end of the day, anybody who's going to put this site under contract and look at it from a 1,200 acre perspective, they're going to expect a 6-month due diligence free look, where if they can back out for any reason and get their earnest money back. That's very common in the industry.
Now, what I wanted to say to that was a lot of that 6 months Spencer, many times, right out to say if it was just a kind of a raw deal we're talking about, then they need all 6 months to do a lot of the things that you guys have already had performed. So there's a lot of due diligence, Rhett, that is already in our hands that simply needs to be updated with the stuff that they had done with TVA and Morel. What I'd like to suggest there is that we say that the due diligence will end after XYZ has been completed, whatever that is, not to exceed 180 days. So that if we can help them with things that are due diligence that's already in hand, that will shorten the need for some of those studies. Maybe not everything they're going to do, but for some of them. But at least that'd give us an opportunity, Spencer and everybody, that if we could get all those boxes checked earlier, then that 180 days could be significantly shortened. Rhett, have you seen that happen at any of your deals with D.R. Horton?
Yeah, I mean, so I think he had some language in there about getting certain entitlements. So yeah, you could just link it to, hey, if these get done sooner than you think, then the expiration of the due diligence period will be tied with that, but not to exceed 180 days. I think that's very reasonable.
So that way, Spencer, we paint a worst case scenario, and hopefully we'll be able to manipulate that and get it a lot faster for everybody.
Okay. And my final concern was if we kind of can't accept any other contracts or anything like that, how is that going to affect the farmer? Because if, let's say, they say, well, that's nothing can be done, contract nothing. Well, each one of us sign a contract with the farmer.
Yeah.
So I want the farmer to be able to farm. And if they back out 6 months, we're not stuck with them backing out. We lose earnest money and we lose farm income. Then we got nothing. I expressed that to you once before too.
Yeah, sure. And we can provide for that in the actual contract. Okay. And it would say something to the effect that they have to give a certain amount of notice. And if they close or they take title, they indemnify that farmer, they indemnify you so that nobody's lost because of that transaction. We would just have to make sure that's all provided for in the contract. And Brooks, I see were you going to say something?
Oh, well, no, but all these other tests were done without, we can talk, Mike can I think talk more about it, but I don't think the majority of these testing and stuff they need to do would necessarily stop our farming operation. I think it would be more just, they may have to be out there doing a few tests here or there that may be in the way, but I don't think that would be a problem. I don't think they're going to want us to stop farming while they do some of this.
Well,
I understand it.
We have Bagation and I are working on some land over in Section, and that we actually had the farmer there, and he was saying, well, once I plant my corn, I've got this much money kind of exposed. If you guys come in and close on your deal a month into my crop, then that's what I'm talking about, that we've got to be able to indemnify that farmer and the landowner for any expenses or any income they might have gotten had they been able to harvest, that kind of thing, not just the disruption of the farming.
Yeah, and we can work with you on that. I've done lots of sale contracts where I've got good language. We can put in those contracts that spells out how the farmers reimbursed if if we do happen to close and they break ground before any crops are being able to be harvested.
Perfect. Okay. Spencer, that kind of addresses that, I think, doesn't it? Do you agree?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to protect him and us on that end.
Gotcha. Okay. We already talked about OMI and Morel. The rock quarry. Rhett, what's the latest for us on while we're here? Let's talk about the rock quarry because that may have an impact on both this LOI and going forward.
Yeah, I've been keeping in touch with ADEM and they still have not put it on public notice, but I'm being told every week I'm being told that it's coming. So, I know that when we were talking about strictly industrial user, we thought maybe that might be an asset. Kind of the more we've dug into it with different, Huntsville's perspective and just other interest we've gotten in the property, it remains to be seen whether it will be an industrial use or even a residential use. And obviously a residential use, we wouldn't want the rock quarry. So I'm monitoring the issue, but until they put it on public notice, there's not a whole lot we can do. But it is definitely something we need to continue to monitor.
Okay. And I don't have any of the notes as it relates to the LOI. So I do have a couple of other comments I wanted to bring up about the gas line, but let's talk more about the LOI. Is there anything else, Clark, Bagasha, Rick, Rhett, or any of the owners that you want to ask or talk about? Any questions about the LOI that we haven't covered? No?
I have something.
Hey.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
I kind of hate to bring this up, but if we end up selling it, the whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's a lot more wetlands on the southern half than there is on the northern half. And I think I'm probably the only person that's affected by this. Well, maybe Spencer. We're the two people that are only one or the other. And so if we're reducing the price for the wetlands, then.
Well, everybody shares a percentage.
Yeah.
So their percentage would be affected too.
Yes, I think the only way this is going to work, Indra, equitably, would be to take the whole 1,280 acres with wetlands and uplands all together in one pot, sell it, and everybody divvy up based on their, based on their ownership. So everybody would get $27,890 an acre for their land.
And that's what Indra's saying, is that if you blend it like that, then on a percent basis, she has a higher percentage of upland to lowland. So then ultimately she's getting, a lower price is what she's trying, and she already said that, but so I think what she's thinking is that you need to look at this from a northern and a southern, and then, or something like that, and divide it up that way is probably how she's going to be looking at this in order to make it equitable from that standpoint. And I don't know how you do that. If you divide it into, say, okay, you're going to pay us this much for your upland and this much for your bottom land, and then that comes out to up to $27,000 an acre overall, but we're going to base that on these two. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Let me work on that. I hear you loud and clear, and we have actually had sidebar conversations about that topic. I don't have an answer for you right now, but Brooks, I'm going to try to tap into your intellect and Bagasha, some of you. We'll come up with something that makes sense so that when we lay it on the table, everybody on this call and every owner will look at that. I'm hoping they're going to say, okay, now that seems fair.
Yeah.
That seems reasonable. Okay.
I'm only asking for fair.
Right. And that's a very legitimate concern, comment, and point that you bring to the table. And I apologize. It's one that when I threw it all in a melting pot there, I did not take that into account. So I'm going to retract a little piece of my statement and reserve the right to come back to you on that one.
Okay. And I just wanted to tell you, and I was just waiting to get to this call before I tried to bring anything up, but we did get our appraisal from Alan Sasso.
Oh, okay.
And for the whole northern half. And he did what y'all are talking about, where he did a price that included the upland and lowland, or whatever we're calling it. He included everything, and it was just below $30,000 an acre.
Interesting.
So I have this in my background while we're talking about these other numbers, which is, what they were, if I understood this LOI, that they were sort of offering that just for the upland.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I don't think I'm going to be jumping into anything too fast, but I just wanted to share that. And would you might like to see the appraisal?
I would love to, if you'd be willing to share that with me. Absolutely.
I also had an appraisal done about 3-4 months ago, and it came back, including everything upland and lowland, at 25. So, I would think me and Indra would be somewhere in between or pretty close. We should be pretty close. I don't see why hers would be that much different than mine, but that did include the entire amount at 25,000 per acre.
Okay.
Now that was just an appraisal. can't remember the guy's name, but he's very reputable down in that area.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's a difference in the amount of wetlands, so that could affect the difference in your price and mine.
And that makes a lot of sense because we're talking about, it's so funny y'all said that because we just came up, my number came up to 27,890. And if you take the 25,000 and the 30,000 and average it, it's 27,500.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what we just came up with. So that really kind of makes a lot of sense in kind of what we're looking at there, as far as kind of that 27.5 to 30,000 for everything. It kind of makes sense based on those appraisals.
What I'd love to be able to do, Indra, if you'd share that with me, I'd love to see his math or his approach on how he blended that. And we could use something very similar to that with Geisha. We could work up something where we're doing a correlation between your percentage of uplands and wetlands and how that correlates with the overall, so that if you had, I don't know, if you had a percentage of the overall property and you had a certain percentage of uplands, say, compared to Spencer's with maybe the same footprint of land, but he had a lower percentage of uplands on his, there's bound to be a correlation of how we can blend that. And it makes sense for Spencer. And it makes sense for Indra and Billy, everybody on the call here.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people own different amounts in the northern and the southern part. And I don't know if they care because it sort of averages out, maybe, I don't know. But, I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you when we get off this call.
Okay.
What he did was, I mean, it's like 50 something pages. And he did this thing where he did just wetlands that had sold and just uplands that had sold. And then what was up for sale now. And I mean, there's so much detail.
Well, what you just said to me resonates in that one method may be literally that if you have X acres on your piece of ownership of uplands based on this valuation, that we carve out that value for that and we carve out this value. We're selling it to Brett on a blended rate. But as we divvy this up, that may be how you divide that up in an equitable manner so that each person gets fair share of their upland portion and their wetland portion.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we can work it out among ourselves so we don't have to discuss it with the buyer.
Absolutely. Yes. The buyer, what we need to be concerned with the buyer, in my opinion, is that we're going to sell it to him for 28,000 an acre ish. And he gets the entire parcel.
So are we agreeing to that today?
No, ma'am. No. That's just the number we've been kind of talking about. So let me rephrase that. We're going to go back to the buyer, and we're going to say, we're going to sell you all 1,280 acres of this for X dollars per acre. And the group would have to agree to whatever that X means. Right now, it looks like we're looking at probably 27 to 28,000, but that number needs to be fine tuned. And we'll do that, and then we'll give you an idea of why do we think it needs to be this number? We'll give you the basis behind our position.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as far as the owners go, we can do a pro rata percentage share. And Doug, I actually have a spreadsheet for that, so I'll just need maybe a day or two to punch in some info and turn that back on.
Very good. Very good. Okay. I think that covered everything. Well, the gas line. While I have everybody here on the phone. Rhett, can you and Rick talk to us a little bit about what you guys learned about the gas line, because that question came up and there's somewhat of a time crunch on getting an answer to that. Rick, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, Doug, my conversation was with Wes Kelly, the CEO at Huntsville Utilities, and the issue of infrastructure is related to water, sewer, electricity, and natural gas. All of those, except for the natural gas piece of it, are determined by pre-existing agreements between the various utility providers or geographic locations. The natural gas, as Wes put it, is sort of the wild, wild west. It's up to whoever wants to provide it. And what we found out is that, and we will further determine the validity of this, we believe that if we get the natural gas infrastructure installed, we will not be obligated to whoever the installing entity is. we'll be able to use whoever we want to. But we're going to clarify that and make certain that that's exactly what we understand. And Rhett can weigh in on that as well.
Thanks, Rick. Yeah, no, that's correct. I had a conversation with North Alabama Gas, which is yet another natural gas provider in the area, and they have services at the corner of Mooresville and Old Highway 20. And so what Rick said is spot on. Whereas most utility providers are set in stone, there's really no way to get them to compete against each other for your business. Natural gas is a little different. And so I think we thought as a group that it was good that they were wanting to put infrastructure for free on the property or adjacent to the property. It's just we were cautious in obligating the property owners or any end user in using one particular provider, given that there could be some competition for whoever the natural gas provider is, and they may at some point offer incentives. So that, I think that's it in a nutshell.
Right.
So the way I understand it, the natural gas line being discussed, what started all of this, was going to come off of Mooresville and go west on Fennel, I think, until Fennel makes that northbound turn. And they wanted a 15-foot easement. So the question is, can that be done, and done in such a way that you owners reap the benefit of that without having to commit that you're going to use Athens? Because at the end of the day, Rick pointed out, and Rhett did, that we don't know who that ultimate end user is going to be, and that will determine the provider. Some of them may come to the table with an agreement already in place with one of the providers, and then we get locked into using one over the other. Is that fair to say, Rhett or Rick? Am I saying
Correct.
that?
That's
okay.
correct.
Okay. So the question would be, can we get that 15-foot easement in place, let them put in the pipe, put in the thing, and just not commit, but it offer them an opportunity to competitively bid against the other two providers when that opportunity comes about? And that, yes, Indra.
What you said, there was a time element to this. What, I missed that. What's the
Yes,
time?
ma'am. Well, what started this, there's a gentleman at the city of Athens, and he's retiring, so he's kind of pushing for that. Yeah,
I read it. I read that.
And so some of the leverage that you may have to get that part done may disappear January 1, because you got a new person or a new department you may have to deal with. So that was the only timing. That was the timing part. And I think there's a meeting coming up next week or so. Yes, ma'am. Did you have another question?
Yeah, about this easement. I don't understand. Does that mean that they own the land, or we can't do anything in that land? I mean, or the potential buyer has to leave that land empty, or what does that mean?
Rhett, you're probably the most qualified to answer that question, please.
So the easement means that you would retain ownership to the land, but you're giving them a perpetual easement where they can go in. They'll have like 15 feet on either, or I guess 7.5 feet on either side of their gas pipeline that you can never disturb, or any other future owner could never disturb. You could put a roadway over it, but you couldn't put a building on top of it. And that's just in case they needed to go in there, dig up their gas pipeline, and do repairs to it.
And do we know if the potential buyer wants this, or would every buyer want it, or
It's free infrastructure, and free infrastructure is always a good thing. So I don't think you would have a potential buyer object to it. The only catch is if they obligated you to use their Athens utility because they were putting this in, and that was the only thing we were cautioning against. But as far as putting in a gas pipeline that gives them a 15-foot easement, I don't think any end user would object to that.
You can't build anything that close to a road anyway, so it's not going to affect anything.
And
that's no different than like where your home is, and the utility company has that easement where they have the power lines. You can't build anything under that, but they have the right, if they need to put their truck in there and work on it, they can do that without permission. That gives them that permission.
Is right behind the roadway, so it's not like they're asking to cut through the middle of your property. They're just doing it parallel with the roadway.
With Fennel Road, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And so it's on the north side, so it's in the northern half of the property.
Yes.
I got a question, and this may be my ignorance here, but so that gas line, so is that only then for that gas utility? Like, let's say somebody comes in and buys something on the back side and they decide they want to use a different gas company. Would that gas company then have to get another easement through another part of your property to get their gas line down? Because what you don't want is you already gave one easement for one gas company, and then all of a sudden now you have to give another easement to another gas company to go down a different area to get to a building because they don't want to use the gas company that already has the line there. And now we got multiple easements going through our property.
That's correct. That's my understanding, is that each gas utility provider has their own easements and their own pipelines, so they don't share the same pipeline.
Yeah. So just my thought, just in the way my brain works, if these guys are going to be competing anyways for that business, chances are anybody who can get it is going to probably put that infrastructure down for whoever needs it. I'm just thinking out loud, and I may be way off. Y'all just correct me. You won't offend me at all if you say I'm wrong here. But so my thought is I would hate to give an easement down a road and then turn when you're not even guaranteed it's going to help anybody. And then down the road, you may have to do another easement 15 feet next to it. So I just don't know. That's just my thought off the top of my head.
Yeah, Brooks, how do you guys? Well, we've got a lot of the owners here. How are decisions going to be made like this? Are you guys going to just everybody vote on that, and what's the structure for a decision process here?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's
we haven't
not
gotten
good,
to that point yet, but I think we all are pretty. It seems to be like everybody on this call and everybody, we all seem to be pretty level-headed and all that as far as everybody I've ever talked to. So of course, you never know when until you start really disagreeing on things. But I don't think that's going to be a major problem. I'm hoping not in the future.
Okay. I do have to say that this particular call, I see more. Everybody seems to certainly all of us be on the same page, which I'm really glad to see that for sure. I've not heard anybody or anyone say anything that was one person contrary to the other one. So I think we're moving down a good, very positive path. If this particular letter of intent goes away, we can't work it out. This is just the beginning. We literally put this property on LoopNet. Well, LoopNet has a variety of different exposure levels. So we went ahead and invested on what they call the silver level, I think. Anyway, the first week we put it out there, it had like 60 hits on it across the world. And the second week we had over 700 looking at your property. And and I don't even know what it is today. And we've only had, Alicia, how long? We've had it on LoopNet for maybe 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. And Brett, I'm just curious, where did this, I'm Rhett, I called you Brett. Where did the other guy, how did he find out about the property? Was it on correct?
You mean the guy out of South Carolina?
Mm-hmm.
I just sent it to him because I had a relationship with him, and I knew that they were doing deals around the Southeast. So I just
So that was organic. Okay.
Yeah, it was organic. Yeah.
Organically. Okay.
Okay.
But
Doug, I need to go. So if there's anything I'm going to miss, maybe hopefully we pretty much covered everything. But
we've covered it all.
Okay. Well, I apologize. I need to go. So, but I have a prior engagement. So thank you, and I look forward to seeing what we come up with.
Thank you, Spencer.
Okay.
Bye bye.
You're recording this, right?
Yes, ma'am. And I'll circulate this to everybody. Yes.
When do you think that'll be? I got a phone call and I missed some important stuff, I'm pretty sure.
It takes it a few minutes to kind of cook. After it gets finished, I'll grab that and circulate the link to everybody.
I thought maybe it'd be tomorrow afternoon, but it'll be sooner than that. Okay.
Oh, yes. Well, this has been going on about an hour, so I don't know how long it's going to take the process, but it'll be tonight. I'll get it out tonight for sure.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I just wondered.
And please don't forget to send me that appraisal if you don't mind.
I'm not doing anything until I get that, so I don't forget.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, Brooks, are you still there?
I'm here.
My internet went out for about 20 minutes, so I missed a lot of this meeting. And you may have discussed this during that time. Where are we on this LLC thing?
That's a good question. I'm getting I'm getting some mean eyes from my counterpart over here who's been pushing me to get on this quicker. And I've been really busy. That's no excuse. So the truth is, what we got is, did I send you anybody the questions that the attorney sent us to start looking at?
I didn't get that, no.
Okay. What I'm going to do is I will send that to you, and so ultimately we've got a bunch of questions for us to kind of start going over and looking at and all that. And then once we feel like we have a pretty good idea on how those questions are going to be answered for the LLC and how it's run and how we want to structure it and all that, then once we get that information back to them, they said it's simple. But those are the questions, and I just haven't gotten. And and obviously Spencer is a 50% owner and on the south, and we're 30. And then so I definitely wanted him to get involved, but I know he's been doing the pumpkins and all his stuff, and he's already told me he hadn't had time to even think about anything. So I need to get with me and you and some other folks, and us kind of just do a preliminary run through those questions maybe together and come up with some ideas. And once we feel like we have answered those, then we can maybe send that out to the whole group and make sure nobody's got. I don't want to get everybody doing that; it'll take forever. But if we can get 2 or 3 of us, kind of come up with a good idea that we agree on, then hopefully the rest of the group can then just say, yeah, that sounds reasonable. And if they see something they don't like, we can always tweak some stuff. Does that sound reasonable?
Yes, it does to me. I'm just wondering where if this letter of intent, say for instance, it plays out. We got 180 days there to look at from the point of saying it's going to play out. Would that have any impact on our need to do that?
Oh no! At that point, we wouldn't even think about it. Yeah, if Doug comes back with a price and everybody says, "Man, that sounds great," and we give it to them and they accept it, then we'll just drop that. And as a matter of fact, we weren't planning on doing anything anyways until the first of the year on that, because there's no point in trying to hurry up and get an LLC done in December and then have to do tax returns and all that. We don't want to start that until January, even if we get everything put together. That way we start in January and we start afresh in January. Don't have to worry about doing all the other stuff involved in that for just a month of an LLC formation.
So that's one less tax return everybody'd have to do.
Exactly. Yep. So, and that's another thing too. I may, sometimes procrastination is a good thing. And so, with all this new stuff coming on, we get it marketed, and we had already heard that, I think, we knew Doug had somebody looking. I think, Bethany said she may have had somebody. I was kind of like, well, we got 2 or 3 people kind of looking at it right now. I didn't really want to jump onto that extra fast and do a whole lot of work if something like this was going to happen pretty quick. So anyways, not saying we should prolong. We probably need to start answering some of those questions in case they take longer to answer than we think, but at least then we were prepared for it. But
yes, and in case it falls through, in case the letter of intent. Doug, for you,
yes,
in regard to the gas line,
mm-hmm.
most likely I will be with Mr. Carter on Monday night. Do you want me to ask him that question?
I would think so.
Installing the pipeline, but not committing us to them as a provider?
Yes, sir.
I think I know the answer. I think I know the answer to that. But if it's a need for me to ask that question to shore that up, I certainly can. And then we can move on to whatever the next alternative might be.
Billy, I think the answer to that would be yes. But I think the carrot that we would hold out there said, look, we want you to be the first invited to propose providing, but competitively priced, competitively respond to a proposal. So that he knows he's got a shot at it, but he's not going to be given an exclusive.
Well, he's the oldest gas man in North Alabama, and he teaches people from all over the world at Gas City here in Athens. So this is not his first rodeo.
Well, I don't want to blow that out of the water, but I mean, I can't speak for the ownership here, but I'm hoping that you can couch that in such a way that does not completely end the conversation, but at the same time keeps that open and gets him to entertain the idea of let's put the gas line in, and we've got first shot at proposing to provide the gas.
Well, I'll do my best.
Okay.
Or do y'all know on those easements? If that's a 15-foot, are they exclusively have the right to that? I mean, or could you have somebody else put a gas line next to it in the same easement?
Not in the
That's
same easement, I wouldn't think so.
Okay,
The
I'm
other
just
part of
curious.
that, other part of that, you have to give them a temporary easement as well for while they're doing the work. And that temporary easement goes away when the work is complete.
Is there, Billy,
Yeah,
is there
that's
is there any way to negotiate where it is not an exclusive easement, where we could give them an easement, but we have the right, you guys have the right to have something put in that? Or I guess they
I
don't
don't know,
want to.
I can ask that question. I've never seen that before. Uh-oh, lost you.
Hey, John. I
Yeah,
lost him too.
Yeah,
Everybody loves him?
I lost him too.
Oh.
Yeah, I lost him.
To my headset, and when a phone call just came in and knocked me off the call here. Okay. And that's doubtful that we could do that. That may certainly get a no. But okay. Well, that's everything. And I will circulate notes. Anybody else have any questions?
I'd like to, I have to admit that I'm rather uninformed, even though I've been listening to the meetings of the outlay of the layout of the land and how this north and the south and the east and the west of Mortal Road all falls into perspective. But the reason I say that, if there is a meeting between some of you and Morrell and there's something that's going to be scheduled, I would sort of like the opportunity to tag along and listen to what they say, and I have a better feeling for what all we're talking about.
Absolutely. And Joe, one of the things that we're going to do once we get this proposal from OMI, who's going to be a subcontractor to Morrell, is to have them get on a call like this and answer and show everything that we're talking about and answer questions from an engineering level so that everybody knows what they're proposing and why and what it's going to look like and what the options are up and down, that kind of a thing.
Right. But if there's an on-site initial meeting to discuss how they're going to go about it.
Yeah.
If I got a call, I could probably be there in an hour or less. Or especially if I notify the day before we're going to be at 10, I'd be there. Just to listen. I'm not going to be throwing in any information, but learning.
Understood. Not a problem at all. Clark, Wigasha, and Rick, we'll just have to remember that. I think Sharon went out there today, and I don't know that she's going to have to go back out, but if she does, or if Morrell needs to go back out, you will certainly be one of our first folks we will call, see if you can get out there with us. Okay.
Do y'all have my phone number?
Let me have it just in case. I don't know.
256-497-3541.
That's your cell, I assume, right?
If you really want to get him, you better put down 3540 too.
I answer that phone. Only reason I don't answer if I can't hear it.
All right. All righty. Well, everyone, thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you so much. Good to see everybody. Brooks, Marley, thank you. Did Marley leave? I don't know.
She had to run out. Yeah, she had something else she had to go to. So
I'm sorry. Well, please tell her I said goodbye. I did not mean to not acknowledge her when she first got on. So sorry. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no, that's not. She didn't even want to be in the screenshot, but I made her get in it a little bit.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Doug, can I talk to you for a minute?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
I mean, on the phone or whatever.
Oh, yeah. I'll give you a quick phone call. How about that?
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.